Okay, now we are studying for this big communications test. It's got word problems on it, which I know that's the scary part, but we need to make sure you're good at the easy part here too, so that you don't drop that. All right, we'll get back to this word problem type thing in just a moment. For right now, let's try one of these. Let's say you had negative 5 parentheses 1/3 x quantity squared plus 8. And they said, name the changes that were made to the parent function. And in the order they would have to be done. So since there's 1, 2, 3, 4 changes, 1, 2, 3, 4, give it a shot. I'm going to pause for a second while you see if you know the correct order on this. And the right way to say it, too. You can't say things like left, right. You have to say horizontal. You can't say things like up, down. You have to say vertical. Now, you can say, like for this stretch here, you can't say that's an up, down stretch. You could say it's a vertical stretch. For the 8, you can say up. Okay, here we go. You should have said, the first thing, I suggest you start on the inside. Remember, though, if it was a multiple choice test like the final, it is okay to start on the outside. But I'm going to want you to be consistent. It's one of the best ways to not make mistakes is try to do it the same way every time. If you start on the inside, this is not 1/3 as wide. It is 3 times wider, but you can't say that. You have to say it's a what kind? Horizontal or vertical? Because it's horizontal on the inside and vertical on the outside, and that's also over here. These things are verticals. This is a horizontal, is it stretch or shrink? It's a horizontal stretch. You would think it's a shrink by looking at this, but it's counterintuitive. So horizontal stretch factor, and this is where a lot of people would screw it up. They'd say factor of 1/3. It's a factor of 3. Because if you use the word stretch, you've got to use a number bigger than 1. Even 1 itself wouldn't actually be stretching. If you had a factor of 1, it's staying the same. But if you have a factor of like 1/3, you're saying it's actually shrinking. So you can't say stretch and then say 1/3. All right. Number 2. Start on the outside now. With the outside choices, we got this one or this one first, because that has to be last, because that's an add, and multiplies come first. So of those, I'm going to do the stretch first, but you could have done the reflection first. Either way is okay. I'm going to personally do a vertical stretch factor 5. Notice I did a stretch and I did a whole number again. Then number 3 is the reflection. That's a flip. Yes, it's an up-down flip, but you wouldn't be allowed to say that. If it's flipping up-down, it's going over the x-axis, so it's a reflect over x. And the last thing is the up 8. Raise your hand if you were perfect on that one. Sweet. All right, let me show you the 2 that really mess people up. If I say 3, and then I say 1/4 x minus 3, let's make that an 8, just so it's less confusing, because there's only 1 3 in the problem then. And then I do this. Do you get that those are different problems? They are different. Why is the one different than the other? Because of the parentheses. Some might argue, but that's the same exact thing. No, it's not. If you actually multiply this out, that'll be 1/4 x, and this will be 1/4 of the negative 8. So that will be different. All right, so they are different, and they have to be done in different orders. So of these 2, I'd say people get this one right usually, because they know that, okay, the multiply is normally first, so that can't be first. And you do that. How many of you would have known to do the negative 8 there? Okay, good. On this one, be careful. I've already prefaced you enough that you probably won't screw this up. Try this and tell me what are the 3 things and in the correct order. Pause for a minute while you do that. Okay, numero 1. On the inside, some kids are going to think this and then they're going to be wrong. They're going to think that's a multiply and that's a subtract, and which should go first and blah, blah, blah. What were they forgetting? You should not be comparing the multiply to the subtract. You should be comparing a multiply to a parentheses. Once you're in here, do you get that there are parentheses in there? And aren't parentheses supposed to be first? Yes. So if you're on the inside, it's the opposite of that, and this would have to be first. So how many of you thought the 8 was supposed to be first? Be honest. That's at least half the class. Okay. So do you get why? Because this, don't think of it as a subtract. You got to look at it as a parentheses. You get that parentheses normally come first. It's in the whole, please excuse my name, Sally, parentheses number 1, right? So that's supposed to be first, so we can't do that first. We have to do this 1/4 first. All right, so if that's a 1/4 on the inside, that should be first. That should be a stretch 4 times wider, and it's horizontal. So you could say horizontal stretch factor. Remember I said stretch, so factor 4. How many had the 4 right in your stretch? Okay, good. Then the 2 is the second thing, and that's this. Why is it going later? Because it was in parentheses, which are normally first, so they're not first. Okay, so then I'm going to do this right 8. Now I'm going to move the outside. When I'm on the outside, I only have this, and that's a vertical stretch factor 3. How many of you had it right from the beginning? Okay, only 2 people. All right. So I told you that I was going to catch you because people think they're the exact same thing when you go like this on the inside and you go like this. They think, oh, there's a multiply and there's a subtract. So I treat them exactly the same. This one has parentheses. And the parentheses force you to do this first. Okay? All right. Then, let's move to word problems. The hardest, you know what? I don't like doing one where I just did a problem and then everybody except 2 people got it wrong. And then I just move on. That seems dumb. That's my teacher spider sense catching me there. That's like, that's a bad feeling. I need to leave you doing this right. So let's do one more and see if we can do it right. 5 parentheses, 3 parentheses, x minus 2 parentheses squared plus 7. Tell me, what are the 1, 2, 3, 4 things and in the right order? I want to do this so that you can get almost everybody getting it right as before we move on. I'll pause for a second while you work on that. Okay, Mr. JB, tell me, what do you think? Number 1 should be? You started with this? You sure about that? All right, you're right. Good. Because you normally should do parentheses first, but we're on the inside, so you can't do those first. So it's a horizontal shrink factor. Did you say 1/3? Awesome. Raise your hand if you started right. Good. And if you started right, I bet you will all get the rest of it right, because from there it's pretty easy. Now I go to do the 2. That's right 2. And then the number 3 thing we do is this, and that's going to be 5 times taller. What would be wrong with this? I can't say 5 times taller. Vertical stretch factor 5. The question was, could I have made this 3x minus 6 and then done the problem? Multiplied this out. Do not want you to change the problem and then work the problem. We want you to work the problem as it is. Now, could you actually do that and would it work? Yep. But to answer a test question, you can't change the question and then answer it. You know what I'm saying? So you want to leave this thing without that, and you want to leave it just like this, and you say, okay, don't multiply this out. Just say, I would normally do parentheses first, so I don't. I do the 3 first. Okay, anyway, finish it off. This was a vertical stretch factor 5, and, oh, my writing's getting terrible. And then last is the up 7. Okay, who had that all perfect? There, I'm leaving you all, almost all getting it right this time, which is good. Okay, now I'm going to move on to word problems. You saw one sketch. This was one on your homework, and it's got a half circle, and then it's got a square inside of it. Remind me, which problem number is that? Can you put the iPad away? And if I'm smart about putting my radius in, you know it has to be in right in the middle of that side, right? That's where the radius starts. And then where am I going to go with it? Here? That doesn't make any sense. I would logically go here, because then I can try to make some kind of a triangle out of it. That's radius. Now, next thing you should be thinking is, I don't know how long that side is. So you can call it any letter you want to. And I'm going to choose X for this side. If that side is X, then what's this other side? Right here. 1/2 of X. That's right. Because see, this whole thing would have been a whole X again, because it's a square. So that side right there, from here to here, that's 1/2 of an X. And now, anytime you got a triangle and you're talking about the sides in the triangle, you got to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's the formula. Got to be up there with the most used formula I've ever had in my life as a math teacher. It comes up a lot. All right, in high school math anyway. Then what are a and b? Notice I'm putting this in parentheses. You cannot not have the parentheses. See, if you just drop in 1/2 and then say squared, if you go 1/2 x and then you say squared and you don't have the parentheses, you see what happens? I'm not going to end up squaring the 1/2. You can't do that. How many times have I said this? And there's a reason. I think some of you think it's just like me trying to be careful and not unnecessarily. You need parentheses wherever you have a variable like this, and it's an empty spot. See now, if I drop it in parentheses, I'll get a different answer, and that's the right way to do it. You have to have those parentheses there. This b is an empty parentheses, and I got to drop in something for b in those parentheses. Okay, and then I'm going to drop in b is x, and then I need a plus here, equals c squared, and do I know what c is? Yeah, what's c in this case? R squared. Okay. Now, what do I also say about parentheses around a single thing? Don't need them. So I can drop that and I can just say x squared. Okay. This part, again, people want to just gloss over these little things, or they're not sure what to do. When you have 1/2 squared, the 1/2 squared means 1/2 times 1/2, which would be what? 1/4 x squared plus x squared equals r squared. And this brings up another important point. A lot of people's algebra is weak here, and they don't know how to add those together. Let me give you a simpler one. What if I had 2x squared plus 3x squared? What would that equal? It would equal 5x squared. Would you agree with that one? So then it's taking the two numbers in the front and adding them together. So what number's in front of this one? A 1. So it's 1 and 1/4. Also known as 5/4. 1 and 1/4 is the same as 5/4. And now I have to decide, do I want to solve for x or do I want to solve for r? And I don't know, I don't even know the answer. I totally don't know the answer, because I don't know what they're going to ask for a question. So I need somebody with this worksheet out. You've got it out, right? Would you read me? What do they want in terms of what?
Area of a square in terms of radius.
Area in terms of radius. That means I'm going to have some junk around it, but there'll be a radius in my answer. All right, so now let's write the pure form of that formula, the area for that square. Would you agree that the area of a square is, if it's a square, it's not length times width? And it's not even base times height, because if it's really a square, aren't they both the same? So you could say base times base if you wanted to, or side times side. I'm going to call it, let's say it's side times side. Would you agree that'd be the same as whatever the side is squared? Now, did they ask me for area in terms of side? No. They asked me for area in terms of radius. I'm going to keep coming back to that. If you don't have a goal, if I just said, you, go. You could keep going forever. You don't know where to go to. You got to know where you're going. I'm trying to get to where I have an R in my answer. That's why I suggest you write that down on your paper every time. Figure out what you're heading towards. All right, so I want R's in the answer, so this isn't good enough. It's got an S there. I need to put an empty spot and drop in something else. that has r's in it. So what do I want to solve for? S, the side of the square. But what did I call the side of the square when I drew my picture? X. I called that X. So then am I good enough now? Area is X squared. No, it's still not good enough because what do I want? R. So I got to do it again. Area equals something else squared. What's X? Oh, I got to find what X is. Now I know what I should take this thing and solve it for. This little equation right here, I got to solve for the X, not the R. So once I know what X is, I'll drop it right in here. All right. And I'll have area with an R in it. All right, so I got to get this X alone. So how do we get that 5/4 off of there? A lot of people got to the 5/4 part and then could not understand why the answer key had a 4/5 in it. It's because you're trying to right now solve this, and how do you get a 5/4 off of here? You times it by 4/5. And then this cancels this, and now the X is almost alone. How do I get that squared off of there? Square root. Final answer, X equals, now yes, there's a plus and minus here, but will a negative side of a square work? No, so we just drop the negative. 4/5 R squared. Now, am I done? No, I still haven't put this where it's supposed to be. And I forgot the square root. Thank you. There. I square rooted both sides. I never actually did it. I'm going to here. Square root. There. Okay, and this should technically be absolute value of X, and I addressed that because now you can have a plus and a minus, but the minus doesn't matter, so dropping that one off. So it's just the positive root. Why did I want that? Because I wanted something in here. So now I'm going to drop in my X, which is square root of 4/5 R squared. Now I can look back at what I was trying to go for. I wanted something with an R in the answer, and I've got something with an R in the answer. Now, do you have to simplify this? No. On this test, we've told you that you do not have to simplify. You may leave your answers unsimplified. But would the squared and the square root cancel each other? Yes, they would. Area would be just 4/5 R squared. Okay, that's one of the tough ones. Now, if all you do is think about the toughest ones that we have, you will get depressed. You will think these are going to be impossible. But there's lots of easy questions on the test, too. Not lots, but there's some, and such that there's only probably, I'd say, 2 really hard ones. Do you have to get one of them right to get an A? Yeah, that's how that works. They're going to be R3s, and you'll have to get at least one of them right to have a chance at an A. Okay, so that's one of the hard ones we covered. Let's try another one. Let's talk about that box. Remember the box where you cut out the corners? All right, let's make sure you're good at that. Let's say that we make a box, and this time, this one's going to be a box that you can put a carton of milk in. And so basically, we want it to be fairly tall. So we're going to cut out a fairly big corner out of our rectangular piece of cardboard. So picture a milk carton. Nowadays, they almost always come in jugs, but in the old days, they were made of cardboard. All right. So let's say that this is 14 inches long, and that the other side over here is, let's say, 10 inches long. If you cut out the corners and make them squares, the question would ask, what is the volume in terms of the height? Volume in terms of the height. See, I'm going to write it. The volume in terms of the height. I want to have an H in my answer. Or multiple H's. You put that device, even though it's not working, just put it away. That one. Thank you. I know it's a big part of everybody's life. It is a big part of mine too. There's times to put it away. All right, so I would hope you know the pure form of this formula. Volume is length times width times height. And what letter is the only okay letter in there? H, so I can leave that one alone. Volume equals h. And I got to drop in something different for L and W. The length is the long one, so it's not. Why is this wrong? What do you mean there's two x's? What are you talking about? It's not 14 anymore. You're taking off this distance, these two distances. When we fold it up on these dotted lines, that'll be less than 14. It'll be 14 minus an x here and minus an x there. So 14 minus 2x and 10 minus 2x. Same thing on the other direction. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, good. Now let's talk about a circle. What? Oh, that h should also be changed to what? An x. That way there's only one letter in my answer. Now, if they were all h's, that'd be good too. But if it is okay, if you want to change them to x's instead of h's, that's all right. Yes? Yes, same deal, but I guess the way I labeled my picture is the way I should put my formulas. And the way I labeled my picture was that this little x, that's the height. I can't all of a sudden say it's the width, but all right. All right, let's try one more with a circle. And I think this will be it, and after that, you're going to have work time. So focus for me one more time. Would you please start by drawing me a circle? And I'm going to say the radius of this circle is 4 pi x. Purposely kind of vague on what the radius is. All right. If the radius is 4 pi x, my question is, I want the area of the circle in terms of the circumference. Area in terms of the circumference. So it's got a C in my answer. What was the radius again? 4 pi x. Okay. You know what to do? Okay. Start by asking yourself, what is C? You've got to know the formula for this or you'll be toast. What's the C? What's C equal to? 2 pi r. And what's r?
4 pi x.
See what I'm doing here? Now, if I stick this in wherever I see C, I see a C right there. I need the formula. Wait a minute. I need a formula for area. Got to start with that pure form of the formula. Area equals pi r squared. So am I going to stick this in for C? No, I don't even have a C in my problem. I have to put in, I have to get r alone. All right. So this all seems really important, but I can't use it yet. We'll get back to it. What's the r? You know what r is? 4 pi x. Am I good yet? No. Why isn't this equation good enough? What do you want right there? You can't have that x there. You have to have a c there. Can you just swap it out and say x is c? Is x equal to c? No. So this formula going to come in handy, maybe? What do you got to get alone? X. Now, if I go pi times 4 pi times that one little thing can't be there. That x has to be gone. And I have to figure out what x is so I can drop it in right there. That's kind of off a little bit. Let me fix that. This x has to go in there. So I got to know what x is. That formula can tell me what x is. So let's extend the page a little bit here and say, how do I get this x alone? I'm dividing by 2 pi, 4 pi. Is that okay? Yeah, it would be probably simpler if I said it was 8 pi squared. But I'm just going to, I think the best thing is right now, I want to just get the x alone. I'm going to divide by exactly what I see. Dividing by 2 pi, 4 pi. That will make this cancel and this cancel, and the x is alone. So x is equal to c over Well, at least I got to say 8, and then pi times pi is pi squared. And then I was looking for something to plug in for that x. And now I have it. X is equal to that. So final answer, area equals pi times 4 pi times something, and the whole thing is squared. And the little something I got to put in there is this guy right here. That's going to go over in there. And it's going to be c over 8 pi squared. All right, another tough one. Now, for your homework for tonight, I had you skip a bunch of problems on the worksheet. Well, just do the ones we skipped, okay? And this is going to take some self-control because you're going to be tempted to just fool around for the last 20 minutes here. Don't. You got a hard test tomorrow. At least some of them are significantly hard problems. Practicing right now would be very smart. So come up, ask me questions. And you know when you're close at the end and I'm making a decision about should this kid get that bump? I mean, God, they missed it by 0.4%. They could have the B instead of the B minus. Should I give it to them? Should I not? It's moments like this right now that help me make that decision. Should I give them the bump or not? It's the kind of thing called teacher discretion. It's not how much do I like the kid. Because I've had times where I really like the kid, but I don't give them the bump because they screw around all the time. Okay? So, your choice on what I see during this next half hour. All right, I hope I see the best side of you. Do your best. Save.